Hey everybody, I'm here today with Gerry Brennan from Cloudbooking. He's the CEO and founder. Gerry, thank you very much for speaking to me today. Can you introduce yourself to everyone? Tell us a little bit about yourself and about Cloudbooking.
Hi Lloyd, it's a pleasure and thanks for inviting me on. Really appreciate it. We're a company that trades in both the public sector and the private sector. We've grown dramatically over the last sort of 5 years or so. Essentially what we do is we provide online hosted software that allows organizations of all shapes and sizes to make better and more efficient use of the space they provide to their staff. So it's things like meeting rooms, hot desks, car park spaces, visitors, that kind of thing. That's in essence what we do as a business.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, Joe. Thank you for the intro. And I think with everything that's happened with COVID, those sorts of technologies that kind of utilize space really effectively must be more important now than ever. And something I should have mentioned from the outset, kind of kudos to Cloudbooking in terms of their position on the Tussell Tech 200. You guys had over 100% growth over the last financial period. So clearly what you're doing is working. So congrats on that. And another reason why we had you on today is clearly you've had success in this space. So we wanted to talk around building strong relationships and how that helps to win more deals in the public sector. So let me get cracking with asking you some questions and kind of plugging into some of that expertise. So Joe, to start off with, when selling to the public sector, what do you think the benefits are of having strong relationships in the first place?
I think it's I guess it's a similar thing, no matter what the client, whether they're public or private sector. But essentially, I think you have to acknowledge that when things go wrong, because they do, right? No system is infallible and is perfect. You have to have a firm foundation from which to fix those kinds of issues, So it really means that you've got to build a strong relationship with a client from the start. So you're always working together. And we've got at Cloudbooking, we've got a 96% client retention rate, throughout the life of our business. And that's amazing. I'm really proud of that. And it does suggest that we do build those long-lasting relationships with clients by being open and honest and being collaborative and listening and trying to learn all the time. And that's a theme that I want to keep coming back to, the importance of learning from the things you get right and wrong in the public sector. But I think a strong relationship, it gives you, if you understand your customers' needs in a changing landscape, like what's happening now, post-COVID, we're all trying to figure this out together. No one's got all the answers. I guess we've got more expertise than most because we've got the technology to try and show people how to change. But it's particularly difficult for organizations with lots of staff, which of course most public sector employers have. So it's this idea of, trying to get a lot of people to change the way they work. What we've seen in the private sector is that lots of companies have reduced their real estate by anything up to 60%. They're not reducing the number of people, they're just expecting people to work in a different way. And although the public sector might not be divesting themselves of the same amount of space, they are still trying to figure out how to get employees to return to the office in a way that suits everybody. The world of work has changed, whether we like it or not. And I think it's really important that we have a deep understanding of those requirements of each of those individual organizations, and we don't treat them all as one. And I think what you get from those long-term relationships is things like case studies, reviews, that kind of thing, where as long as we're making sure our clients are happy, we hope that they will give testament to that level of satisfaction to future clients. It's kind of really important. So, and I think the case studies that are on our website reflect that. But it's really simple to me. The business rule applies whether it's public, private, whatever. The key thing to do is to build something that's useful to people. If you can find a gap that no one else is in, then great. It's rare that anybody does that. But make it work all the time. Fix it fast when it doesn't work, and make sure it keeps advancing and improving all the time so that you stay ahead of your competition. That's it, really.
I think summarized really nicely. And I think there's something in there that it's in the essence of what you said. You didn't necessarily use this word directly, but there's this theme that's coming through in all of these chats that I've had so far, really about trust, right? And you're talking about long-term relationships as a vehicle for trust. really strong case studies that are built out around solving somebody's problem properly and having the case study to back that up. And that's kind of, that's something which we see more so. Of course, it's a factor in private sector as well, but in public sector, there's something about having this kind of concrete evidence, testimonial, and the relationship that goes with that that's so important. So interesting to hear that point kind of being raised again. Gerry, to follow up just the next question. So what do you think organisations often get wrong when handling relationships with the public sector?
I think it's a classic mistake that everybody falls into. You know, we did it for a long time, and the first thing we got wrong is that we took a one-size-fits-all approach. You know, once we got one client in the NHS, for example, we kind of thought they were all the same, and of course they're not. You know, the NHS is just an umbrella organisation that is made up of these completely different organizations. Sorry. So what we try and do is we with every client we have, we try and listen to that client and understand what it is they're trying to achieve with a system like ours. So then I think uniquely in our market, what we do is we customize our solution based on that engagement and based on continuous feedback. So I'm a great believer that any proper SaaS business, you should have a system that by the time you get to the renewal of your contract, you know, in 3 years usually in our case, the system should be more important and more embedded into the client than it was on day one. Otherwise, you're kind of doing something wrong. So I think it's important to understand that every organization, you know, whether it's a local authority, NHS, whoever it might be, has a different set of requirements, and you have to try and really understand what those requirements are. And as I said, the NHS, great example, it's made up of a series of unique individual organizations, and every one of them must be treated in a different way. I think it's also important to try and understand how organizations operate, how they function from a procurement point of view. You know, there's one thing that's always top of the list for any organization in the public sector, and that's information security. So if you aren't 100% behind your InfoSec, if you don't have, you know, all of the answers for the IT team, you're not going to get any further. It doesn't matter how good your product is, you're just not going to get past first base. So we've invested, having learned those lessons ourselves. You know, we got our ISO 27001 certification a few years ago now, and we've invested in an information security team. So those guys are always on standby to answer any questions, you know, to offer support to our sales and our implementation teams to make sure that they've got all the answers for those organizations when those questions are asked.
I think that's it's so important as well what you're saying about these are individual organizations. The last one of these conversations that we had, or one of the previous ones we did, was all about selling to the NHS, and it's this idea that the NHS is the same. It's like, just because all of these organizations are kind of under this umbrella, as you called it, don't think for a second that they think the same way, that they buy in the same way, right? And we talk a lot at Tussell about routes to market. Well, just because one buyer's favouring a particular framework or is buying in a certain way, don't expect that everybody who's a similar type of organisation in the public sector will buy the same way, because evidently they don't, right? So that's a really interesting point you make about really deeply understand who they are, what's driving those decisions, and how they're different to, you know, the local authority or the contracting authority next door, who you might easily assume is the same, but clearly they're not.
No,
okay, brilliant. Well, look, the next question is all about kind of maintaining. So how do you maintain and improve relationships with stakeholders in the public sector, and how do you see that differing to private sector? So what are the kind of main differences there?
Okay, it's an interesting question actually, because I think it depends on the size of the private client. You know, but even now, you know, even smaller clients, smaller customers have got really kind of detailed InfoSec requirements. Their approach to IT security is, you know, better than it's ever been. It's usually because of the effect of what I described in some of my last answers. That selling to large organizations, you have to be in a different headspace in terms of your IT security. It's vital. So it doesn't differ massively with the larger clients. You know, we deal with some of the world's largest organizations like Airbus and Experian, Anglo-American, Intuit, you know, all over the world. And those guys, as you can imagine, put you under the same level of scrutiny as any public sector client would. So I think it's, it's important that you've got to be robust. You've got to be set up and ready for scrutiny, from any organization that takes InfoSec, IT security as important, as seriously as public sector clients do. But I think in terms of, there's a lot of really important lessons that you have to learn to be successful in the public sector. And I think one of the key differences, I think it's easier to build long-term and strong and long-lasting relationships with public sector clients, because often there's continuity in staff turnover, for example, that you don't get in private companies. You tend to deal with the same people for quite a long period of time. So as long as the relationship is maintained, that really helps in terms of keeping that contract for a long time, getting those clients to talk to prospects, to tell them about the experience, and how supported they feel. And I think if you've got ambitions to grow, it's crucial that you do that. But the flip side of that is kind of the fact that it's difficult to get into the public sector in the first place, right? I'm sure everybody's told you the same thing, because nobody in the public sector wants to be first, right? It's just a fact, So it'll be really hard for anybody to get their first few clients under their belt. But I think once you do, you can, and again, I think there's nothing wrong in, you asking those clients to help support you to win new business. And it may be that you give them more favorable terms, right? Who knows? You've got to do whatever you have to do to make sure that you grow in that sector, because it's so worth it. So, that's kind of what we've done, is we've tried to get our early adopter clients to act as referrals to our new public sector clients. But the lesson, more important than anything else, the lesson that I learned, not the hard way, because we were kind of geared up to do it, but I learned over and above any other one, is that you've got to keep trying. So when we lost RFPs, right, when we lost out in the early days, what we would do is go back to the client and ask them why. So, it's inevitable that when you're a small company and you're starting out, you're not going to have all of the tools in your armory to meet the requirements of large companies. So, but what you have to do, what's incumbent upon you as any business owner, is to learn why you failed and to make sure that you don't make the same mistakes again. So that's kind of what we did. When we released our new product in 2017, we focused a lot on the interface, on the look and feel, and probably didn't have as many features as we would have liked to, because there just wasn't enough time to get them all finished. But my logic is that if somebody wants to use your interface because they like the way it looks, they'll kind of forgive the things that aren't there yet, as long as you deliver them on a roadmap timeline that you say you will. And that's certainly what we've done and we've tried to do over the last few years. So if you go in for RFPs and you're not successful, ask them why you failed. These guys will tell you, they'll give you the feedback, because they want the landscape to be more diverse. They want more suppliers. They want to be able to draw from a different well than they're used to doing. So they're there to try and to help you improve. So I think the trouble is with that, it can kind of take a long time to achieve that, but it's worth it. And there is no other way. Once your public sector clients see that you have other public sector clients that are willing to endorse the work you do, you find it much, much easier when you get to that stage.
That really resonates with me. The bit about, for my background, I've worked in procurement and I've kind of done some bidding as well into the public sector. But from a procurement perspective, you'd be amazed at how few companies really. I'm not on about kind of asking for feedback just generally. I'm on about really wanting to understand, why didn't we win deeply, and actually having those conversations in quite a kind of human, constructive way.
Yeah.
Like, lots of people get that angry, why didn't we win? And it's this. But actually to just say, look, the person running this process is human. They're trying to get something done. You didn't win, but actually, if you approach it in the right way, they're actually quite willing to have those conversations with you. Yeah. And if you can get over the kind of, I know a lot of people have this like, it's so price focused, or there's some stupid reason we didn't win. Actually, if you can overcome that and really understand deeply why didn't we win, then you can use that as a really powerful tool to help you going forward. As well as what you said, Joe. As well as what you said, the other bit was, which kind of resonates as well, is the foot in the door. The foot in the door bit is hard, and we hear that a lot, right? And then as well as that, using these customers as kind of advocates, as reference points. And I can see from the conversations I've had so far in my own experience, how that is such a powerful tool to say it's endorsed by this person already, and they're helping do that. But that first bit being really tough to just break in, right?
Well, I'll give you an example, right? So I remember we went in for an RFP. I knew we wouldn't win it, right? We weren't ready, and it was one of the world's largest consulting companies. And what was interesting is that this is what started this thought process for me, is that the buyer offered a call. He said, "I want to talk to you because I want to tell you why you lost." So we took the call gratefully, and the explanation was that this guy said to us that the average age of their employees in that company was 26, right? Which was quite depressing. The average age is 26. Yeah. And he said that in terms of the interface, they all preferred ours. They loved it. They voted for you guys over every other product. The problem we had as an organization is too small. You're too UK focused. You didn't have a few of the key features that we needed. But the reason I wanted this call is I wanted to tell you to go and build them, and we'll come back. The next time we're looking, we'll come back to you guys first. And I'm delighted to say that about 12 months ago, we re-engaged with that company, and the back end of last year, we won that contract. So it just shows, even if the relationship isn't that of client supplier, just act as if it's going to be one day, and who knows, your ambitions might be fulfilled. Don't ever give up.
I love that. I love that story. That's exactly what people should do more of, and I think there's a reluctance to sometimes, which is a shame. Okay, Gerry, got a few more for you before I let you go. So let me just ask you a little bit about timing. So if you're kind of trying to build new relationships with the goal of kind of doing more deals with these people in the future, kind of what's your view on timing? Like, are you going to meet them, try and make the relationship today to sell to them tomorrow, or what does it look like from your perspective? How does timing work?
I think actually that's a really good question, because I think that the timing starts when you decide that your organization is going to try and make inroads into this sector, and that could be any sector. So what you have to do is understand the clients that you're going after, understand what makes them tick, and the only way to do that is to get to know them. Right. So long before they ever become clients, go to events, go to road shows, listen to interviews like this, I guess, and just try and understand what makes those people tick. And that engagement can be years before. I think our sales cycle for large companies is at least 6 months. Usually, we've had clients we've engaged with, like the one I described a minute ago, right? That took 3 years, for us to land. So I think it can be years in the making, but you have to decide what your strategy is as a business. And if public sector is part of your strategy, you have to accept it will take you time, and you have to win people round. And, somebody described it to me once. In fact, somebody drew me a picture when I started in business, and the picture was of a ravine, and a half constructed bridge. And what people have to see is that you continue to build that bridge to get yourself from one side to the other. And then they recognize the bridge, and they recognize that you've been around long enough to have built the foundations, from which to grow. Mm-hmm. And often, sometimes that's all it takes. People say, these guys have been around a while, they know what they're doing, and I feel like there's a momentum there, and there's a trust I have in that organization. It can take years, but it's the only way.
Yeah, I think that's a lot. I think a long game approach is the way for public sector, certainly, even when you're selling something, as both of our companies are, that's kind of, it's a SaaS style product, it's easy, it's kind of, there's not much friction to kind of the buying and selling process. Still, the relationship part takes a long time, and the public Absolutely. Sector, that trust bit is massive.
Well, I should add, Lloyd, that actually we did a lot of research as well in the public sector last year, and we did a poll, and the company that did the poll ended up becoming a client and buying the Cloudbooking system themselves. So who knows? Maybe you guys will do a bit more background digging and feel the same way.
There you go. All right, Gerry, let me, conscious of time, so let me ask you to finish off. What are your top tips for bolstering your public sector relationships? If there was one or a few things that you'd leave people with after listening to this today, what would they be?
I think there's a few, yeah. And I think, like the most obvious one, right, is get yourself onto the G Cloud. portal, get yourself on the G Cloud list, and make sure that you renew it every year, because that was the best time, the best investment in time and effort and money we ever took, right? Because, you know, most of our contracts come through that portal. Now, the other key thing is that at the time, you know, the expectation was that, well, it wasn't a real expectation for me. I knew it wouldn't be real, but the idea was that you were almost like pre-vetted. You know, these companies have been checked by us, and they are. But of course, no organization is gonna avoid the scrutiny and the level of infosec checks they would do because you're on the G Cloud list. You still have to make sure that, you know, you're geared up for that. But getting on G Cloud is the most important, because otherwise public sector organizations can't find you. So, you know, put the time and effort into getting that sorted. And I think, as I kind of alluded to throughout my answers, really, you have to understand what features and services are going to be of value to each client. You know, you have to understand the needs of those clients, and that's a consultative process. And I think you then have to try and construct your offer around those needs based on what you find. You know, for some clients, all they want is a simple method of booking a desk so that people can be in the office 1, 2, 3 days a week, whatever it might be. We have other clients in the public sector that have invested heavily in sensor technology, you know, where we put a ceiling sensor above all the desks so that we can monitor how those desk spaces are used. We can automatically check people in and out of desks, that kind of thing. So they want, you know, the sort of full automated solution. And as I said earlier on, you know, I keep repeating, it's key not to make the mistake of thinking that because you've landed one NHS trust or one local authority or one government department, that you're going to be able to sell to another one in the same way, using the same tactics. And actually, it can often wind them up, that you say, well, we dealt with X local authority in, you know, wherever it may be, in this way. What's that got to do with me? Would you say that to Airbus if you were dealing with British Aerospace? I don't think you would, because it would probably annoy them. So I think you have to understand that what works for one organisation won't necessarily work for them all. It's really important. And as I said, you know, in my answer to my last question, it's to go to events, get to know these guys, get to know these people, because as I said, you know, they're often the procurement people and the facilities guys, and, you know, they're all in these roles for a long time, you know. So if you rub them up the wrong way or you make mistakes, it's often that you're kind of going to find it hard to go back, because, you know, you need to make allies and you need to make friends. It's really important. So I think it's all those things, really. Get on G Cloud, understand that you've got to treat every client individually, and get to know people, build relationships with them before you even start doing business together. You know, it's really important.
Great stuff, Jay. Look, some really, really good tips to leave everybody with today. And thank you very much for your time. For me, it's been a really insightful chat. Great to speak to you. And again, once more, congrats on your Tech 200 placement last year. Wish you all the success for the future, and hopefully we'll speak again soon.
Thanks, Lloyd. Really appreciate it. And thanks for the opportunity.
All right, bye.